evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Inside the Pigskin. Yeah, am I loud? Oh, it only gets worse when I do 108 Stitches baseball talk later on. Good evening to you, Will Vogel. I have a feeling Mr. Vogel will be very active in the chat room. But before I go over everything with everybody, first of all, I want our audience to know that the audio version of this show can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. Please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube, South Florida Tribune. We're striving for 1,000 subscribers. Please also like, comment, and share the broadcast. Want to be a guest? Send topic ideas to South Florida Tribune at gmail.com. And you can also participate in the chat room. If you want to add cost efficiently, call me at 954-304-4941. We are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. Well, great show tonight. We also have a new person who's a member of our team now. And I want to introduce Bo Crouch to the broadcast. Well, welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right. What I want you to do is give the audience an overview. I met Bo on Twitter, and you can meet a lot of fine people on Twitter. I have, and Bo's been very helpful for me when it comes to sharing the content from the South Florida Tribune. And he's the guy I grabbed to. I said, Bo, I'm going to get you on here sooner or later. And Bo was patient enough to hang out. And now he's on, and now that he's in the program here, we're going to be using this guy. So why don't you give the audience an overview of Bo about yourself before we go to the topics, okay?
All right. So as far as being able to find me, obviously you can find me on Twitter. And, of course, my channel is just football-talk. But a little bit about me, my football knowledge. I played until I was 30. I played pro arena ball. So it was a lot of fun. Kind of got away from it, did mechanical trades. And then as I get older, I realized that I want to be closer to the sport. And my body doesn't like mechanical trades as much anymore.
Well, don't feel bad. My body doesn't like anything about me anymore, so don't feel too bad. You can actually buy my game over at Walmart. It's called Operations. So if you want to go ahead and see all the different ones I've had, just buy it. I don't know what they charge for it, but boy, that's my life story in a nutshell. So with that said, I'm going to introduce the crew. Mel Farr Jr. is my new co-host. He was elevated to that position. Good first act with Richmond Webb. Now he's going to be in a different situation, knowing that it's him and I and the rest of you guys. So it's really good stuff. So with that said, okay, well, Mel, your second act. What do you expect out of tonight?
We'll see. Nothing short of spectacular, right?
Oh, no, I expect everything to be spectacular, Mel. We've only been working together forever. And we brought the bacon back. Travis Holmes, welcome back to the big show. Travis.
Thank you for having me as always, sir. Hope we have a good time.
Oh, I know you will. I've been thinking about this crew for a long time, and now we have got it. And Smoking Jeremy B, if there's a one-liner and a laugh, you'll find it with this guy. So we're going to get ready to go here. It's going to be, like I said, a very fun show to be a part of it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we can get done. So Will Vogel welcomes you as well. So, all right, let's get down to business. All right, so let's talk about the Detroit Lions a little bit. Is quarterback hendonhooker the steal of the draft, Mel?
I thought he was the third best quarterback in the draft class. I think we talked about this. CjStroud and Bryce Young. I wasn't really a Bryce Young guy. I really like CjStroud because he's a little bit sturdier. And then I think that hendonhooker was the third best quarterback, and I was kind of surprised that he lasted as long as he did. I'm glad Detroit didn't take him earlier because I really wanted them to draft some people that could come in and play immediately. We know that this kid is coming off a knee injury, and also he's not going to need to play right now because they do have a quarterback there that's very capable. But I think it's a great draft. Looking towards the future. This kid is a very mature kid. He's 25 years old. He's played a lot of football, big-time football at Virginia Tech and also at Tennessee. He's the big reason why Tennessee beat Alabama is because of his play. And so, I think that was a good draft. I think that was a good pickup. I think and he's in a great place. You kind of, I'm kind of like, man, it'd been nice to, get a big guy up in the middle or something like that to, take some of that pressure off the linebackers that they drafted. But at the same time, I understand, what they're trying to do for the future as well in securing that quarterback position because, you don't have to have a high dollar quarterback to get you to the promised land. And that's what they're looking at doing. And, getting the right kind of guys in there that are going to play Detroit Lion football. I think that the fans are going to embrace him. And I think he's going to do a great job there in Detroit. Obviously, he's nothing short of spectacular in college. And I expect him to do the same thing in the NFL.
All right. Well, first of all, I know that Dan Campbell went on record today saying that he was going to redshirt Hooker the first year anyways. And one big third-round quarterback that comes to my mind is Joe Montana. But that said, Jeremy, you're going to read all of Will Vogel's comments because I have a feeling that'll be enough to keep you busy throughout the show anyway. So go ahead.
Will Vogel says, yes, he's the steal of the draft because if he never got hurt, he would have been the first pick overall and would have been the Heisman if not for being hurt. Right. He also says, welcome to Bo.
All right, there you go. And you'll be able to respond to that, Jeremy, after I go around the horn. All right, Bo, what do you think about Hendon Hooker?
No, that was a great pickup for Detroit, especially because they don't actually have to use him right away. I feel like teams have been so anxious to get their new quarterback out that sometimes they're just in a bad situation. I feel like Anthony Richardson is probably going to encounter that. He's going to probably get out there earlier than he should. So I think this is a great pickup for Detroit, especially because they're going to redshirt him. He gets to sit, he gets to learn, especially behind a guy like Goff, who's been in just about every scenario in the league at this point. So yeah, I like the pickup.
All right, Travis, what do you think?
That's a hard one. It's a hard one. Well, I mean, because it's a great pick. It's a third round draft pick. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, how many third round draft picks just don't work out for any team? Like, so they have a position where it's the most important position on the field. To get a third round draft pick with a low risk pick, high ceiling reward, you generally can't beat that. And because of that, and solely because of that, that makes it the steal of the draft. Like if it wasn't that specific situation, I probably would have said somebody like Antonio Johnson for the Jaguars. He was cited to go as early as the early second round, and then they end up getting him late in the fifth. Like that might be one of the ones I probably would have named. But discounting that again, it's a quarterback position and it's a quarterback driven league. So if you can have a third round draft pick and you really can draft one of those every year, every 2 years, and no one's blinking an eye. You kind of have to give them the trophy for that one.
Okay, Jeremy.
Well, the fact that they were able to trade bad twice and still get him at 68 while garnering picks to move back up into the third round to get the big defensive tackle out of Western Kentucky. It was a great move. Plus, if you look at the UDFAs they got that Zach Morton, who's just slightly under the size of Hutch to be the other side in that pass rush rotation. And they also picked up Chris Smith, another big defensive tackle out of Notre Dame. So they did address it because they re-signed almost everybody except for Demetrius Taylor, who they cut today.
Okay, that's fair enough. All right, on to the next topic. We're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers. How will Aaron Rodgers do with the New York Jets? Familiar faces include aalenlazard, randallcobb, and his coach Robertsaleh said that Rodgers is like having another coach on the field. Should help Zachwilson as well. All right, well, we'll start off with you.
I expect him to do well. I mean, he has the luxury of having his previous offensive coordinator there as well. So there's not going to be that situation where he's going to have to go in there and learn a new offense and learn a whole new terminology. He's going to be very familiar with this terminology, and I think that's very smart on the New York Jets' part of bringing in somebody that Aaron was very familiar with and comfortable with, so he can get on the ground and his feet hit the ground running. So I think that's a big plus for him. We know their defense played very well. We know they have some players there. They're going to get Breece Hall back at some point in time during the year. He was well on his way to being Offensive Rookie of the Year last year. I happened to play with I played against his dad, as a matter of fact, in high school. But I'm looking for, they're playing a tough division, obviously. But it is Aaron Rodgers, and I think he has a lot to prove. The 1 year that I think he felt slighted when they moved up to draft Jordan Love, He had a subpar year the previous year. He went out and won MVP. So I think he's going to play with a chip on his shoulder, and he thinks he still has quite a bit left in the tank. And I think that he's going to do well offensively. They're going to have an opportunity. Now, whether they make it all the way to the dance or not, we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, injuries play a large role in that, but they're going to have a very good chance to compete.
Well, it's funny. Nathaniel Hackett was hired by the Denver Broncos thinking they could get Rodgers, didn't work out. And now, meanwhile, Nathaniel Hackett is with the Jets, and they managed to make it work to get Rodgers over there to be reunited. I've always been a firm believer, Bo, that familiarity with somebody that you're comfortable with is a huge benefit. Isn't that correct?
Generally, yeah. As long as it doesn't create some sort of complacency, for sure.
So tell me, what do you think of Aaron Rodgers to the Jets, Bo?
So, I mean, obviously it's going to work. It was a fringe playoff eligible team, if not for some horrific quarterback play. So even if he has fallen off and is every bit the guy we saw last year, they probably still make it as the 7th seed just because that defense was so good. There's weapons around him, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think he has a bounce back year. They have a lot of nice pieces, a really good defense. He's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder because he got moved out of there. So, and he's already there doing off-season workouts with the team, which is something he hasn't done in Green Bay now. So you can see he is far more dedicated than he's been, and he's kind of renewed that chip on his shoulder. I think he has a good year. I don't think they make it to the Super Bowl, but I do think that they'll be a solid playoff team. That being said, from the Jets organizational side, if they don't get a ring this year or next, I do feel like it's a bit of a disappointment because they had the opportunity to get just about any one of the free agent quarterbacks this offseason, and any of them could have led them into the playoffs based on what they put on the field last year.
Well, I should also point out that they have a 12-year playoff drought. So if they can get that gorilla off their back, it wouldn't hurt either. Then nobody has to hear about it. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Travis. Okay, Aaron Rodgers and the Big Apple. Is the Big Apple going to turn out to be a rotten apple for him?
Yeah, and that really does come to Bo's point. That really does come down to what specifically is success. Like, is just making the playoffs and getting kicked out in the first round, is that success in your opinion in that city? I don't think I believe that. And that's where I struggle with that piece of the question. It's Aaron Rodgers. If you give him 2 years of not making the playoffs, there's no way that city is moderately as kind as Green Bay media is to Rodgers, right? And it took them everything. It took moving, mountains before they would even treat him moderately negatively, just to ask him the difficult questions. That's not happening in New York. That's just not happening. Like, he may get that in 6 weeks. So I say that to say, that team was an incredible roster with a terrible quarterback, and now they're an incredible roster with at least realistically an average quarterback. We're hoping that he's at least that. But what I do question is the dynamics of how everything's going to play. They have now given up all these resources for a 2 to 3 year rental, right. And there are obvious questions of, is this going to become a situation where he's okay taking falling back and allowing the coaches to coach and just playing sort of how it was in Green Bay, where he had to step back with Matt LaFleur? Or is this going to be a situation like a Russell Wilson, where he needs to give more of his opinion, more of his input, and maybe try to prove himself by throwing the ball a little bit more? Because that may be a recipe for disaster.
All right, before Jeremy, first you're going to comment on Will's, and then you're going to give us your 2 cents.
All right. Will Vogel says, I think he will play well. They, the Jets, will be second best team in the division behind the Bills. The Jets defense is really good. Also, Rodgers and Garrett Wilson can be scary good.
Okay.
That being said, I said as soon as I saw Nathaniel Hackett was hired as offensive coordinator, they were trading for Aaron Rodgers. I said that on this show.
Yeah, you did.
And And lo and behold, I didn't think it would happen until after June 1st because money-wise, it made more sense for both teams and that all of that draft capital would be future. But they decided to get it done before the draft, and kudos to them. They made it work. Granted, Green Bay's kind of like made some room, but it cost them a couple of guys. And I don't know about their draft, but I like what the Jets did this draft with the picks they had. They had a well-rounded draft. It wasn't at the top and it wasn't at the bottom. It was a nice middle of the road draft, your B minus draft grade. And it makes them look like a more solid team. I think they will make the playoffs. And if they don't, expect New York media to crucify him immediately. I don't care if he has GOAT status in the NFL, because look what they've done to every decent quarterback that got him to the playoffs the one year and missed it the next.
Yeah, no, I'm with you all the way. The New York media is definitely tough, and they are ruthless. All right, well, we're going to stay in New York. Well, Western New York anyways. We once talked about building stadiums that were all dome, but not this one. The Buffalo Bills are about to break ground on their 60,000-plus seat, $1.54 billion new stadium. Guess what? It won't be a dome stadium being built across the street from Ralph Wilson Stadium, their current home. So, all right, no dome. And the Buffalo Bills will always make sure that it's going to be dreadful come wintertime, even with a new play pan.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's smart for the football team. Not so great for the fans, but I'm sure they'll make it as comfortable as possible for them. But they don't seem to care. Right. Bills Mafia. I mean, but that is an advantage. I mean, the one thing that you would always do as a player, you look at your schedule and you look at those months in December and January, where you were playing, and you saw some of those cold cities on your schedule. You hope you're playing them at home and not away. I remember, playing in New England, and boy, it was cold. I mean, real cold. Last game of the season, it was very cold. But it's exciting for the fans there, obviously, that they know that the Buffalo Bills are going to be there. And I think the Pagulas, when they bought the team, they made it known that they had no intentions of moving the team. But yeah, I mean, I think modernizing the stadium. I mean, they're trying to keep up with everybody else. Everybody else is spending money on these big stadiums, big, nice Taj Mahal facilities. And, there's no reason with the way that they've been playing and, the way that the fans come out there and support the Buffalo Bills, there's no reason why they shouldn't be looking at building a new facility for that football club. Plus, those things also help in free agency as well. They help you draw free agencies, your facility, your training facility, as well as the stadium. Now, the downside is you have to play there in the cold as a player. And, a lot of these teams, when you look at the draft, they're pretty smart about the players that they draft. Either they played in high school in a cold weather climate, or they went to college in a cold weather climate. So they know the type of players that they get. It's not, there are some cases where a guy from down south does, or out west does come out there and to a cold weather climate, like Aaron Rodgers, came from Northern California. Brett Favre came from Mississippi, played up here in Green Bay, and they, you just get used to it. But I know as a player, there's nothing worse than playing in the cold. I mean, there's nothing that you hate doing more than doing is playing in the cold. So, they're going to keep that advantage, and that gets in your head, that gets in your psyche. Buffalo, they realize that, and they're going to use that to their advantage, and I think that's very smart on their part.
All right, Bo.
I mean, I always liked cold weather games. So, I mean, to your point, yeah, it takes the right person for sure. I mean, you got to draft your guys smart, because some of those guys from Florida are not going to love being in the Northeast. But being an open air stadium, you got to. There's nothing like football in the snow. Simple as that.
As long as it's not 6 feet like last year that made Buffalo move to Detroit.
Yeah, well, all right, you can say that. Okay, you're funny. I will add one thing though about this, Bo, that you mentioned, and I grew up watching the Lions play at Tigerstadium, and then I covered them at the Silverdome. So, and that's when a lot of these cold weather teams started to go inside Minnesota and so forth. So, all right, Travis, go ahead.
Yeah, I will absolutely agree with everything that both Mel, and Bo have already stated as far as that's concerned. Hey, I'm a Florida guy who played. I played at UCF and then I transferred to Northern Michigan for my final 2 years. So like I'm the example that he's
Real cold.
referencing there. That took me a full year just to get used to. Playing in those outdoor cold games, and I only went to Northern Michigan because we had a dome stadium. So I'm here for. I am absolutely here for those. For the comment that hey, Buffalo is playing the game the right way. They know they're an outdoor team. They know they're built in that fashion. They know they are essentially the Marshawn Lynches of NFL teams. They use that outdoor, January, December weather as that thing that's just going to keep punching you in the face for all of you down south, all of you coastal teams, all of you teams that are, heavily built on speed and passing the ball, and it's just not going to work for you in this stadium. And they didn't want to get rid of that equalizer, that late season equalizer, and it was a smart decision. Like I know some people and fans may have been talking about it on social media, but no, they made the absolute right decision in keeping that outdoor because that changes everything. The best team doesn't always win, as we all know in the playoffs, and any advantage you can give yourself by being the team that practices in this and is acclimated to this, you're going you keep that. Absolutely. And that fan base, that team, they're all built in that fashion.
Okay, Jeremy, before your role tonight, so you start here and then you end with you.
I'm excited for a new stadium for the Bills, and the Bills love playing in cold weather environment. Look at the playoff game last year. Weather can affect road teams. Absolutely. And that's exactly it. It's not like Josh Allen came from southern Mississippi or from Alabama or from Georgia. No, he came from Wyoming, the base of the Rockies in the middle of the Midwest, where the snow can be anywhere from 1 foot to 10 foot in a day. That being said, that's why he doesn't play that bad outside. But if you actually look at his numbers in the dome, for the most part, they're pedestrian. They're just above average compared to what he usually does outside. There's a reason for that. He's not used to being indoors and playing in perfect weather.
Jeremy, you did it again. You do it on every cotton picking show. I've already written down Wyoming football and Josh Allen. Boy, does he do it every single show. What are you, some sort of ESP out in mid-Michigan? And yeah, Travis, I know about northern Michigan. It's cold up there.
Yeah.
Jeremy did it again. All right, whatever.
It's my psychotic abilities. It has nothing to do with the
psychotic ability. Right. That's why he's on multiple shows, Bo. Don't worry. This guy here is a classic, and you're going to get to know soon enough that he is a CLASSIC exclamation point 48 point whatever. Okay.
Have you heard a couple of my comments during that first round of the draft?
Oh, yeah.
All right. My final topic of the night before I turn it over to Mel. Okay. Super Bowl, I think 40 LV11. Is that 57, right?
Sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah, I hate these Roman numerals. Just put the regular numbers out there. Viewership record. Nielsen released a revised number of 115.1 million of Fox Sports broadcast as the Kansas City Chiefs 38-35 win over the Philadelphia Eagles in February. The previous record was actually in the 2015 game between New England and Seattle with 114,442,000 views, not including streaming. All right, Mel, guess what? There are a lot of people that laid eyes on this Super Bowl, and these numbers are staggering, aren't they, Mel?
Yeah, the NFL has done a very good job of making that day an event, making that game an event. They've done an extremely good job with marketing. Obviously, the teams playing helps in drawing fans to that game. You got a big market in Philadelphia, obviously, not too far from New York or whatnot. But yeah, the NFL has done a great job with marketing their product, and it's been like that year after year. Just every single year it gets more and more popular. You look at what they've done with the draft. They've done a great job of marketing that, using that and making football really year round as opposed to just something that's in the fall and in the winter, where people are talking about the draft leading up to the draft, and they do have an excellent coverage of the draft. So, football is definitely, the sport here in the United States. It's the number one sport here in the United States, and that's why it brings in the kind of money, the kind of revenue that it brings in, because they have the audience that they have, and people like the game of football. And I don't blame them. I love the game of football too. So it just speaks to how deliberate they've been in growing the game.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Bo.
Yeah, I mean, I, obviously as a Seahawk fan, I wish the last 20 seconds went a little different. But, yeah, I mean, they're incredibly good with their marketing machine. And, I mean, I agree with Mel 100%. I mean, it's the way that they've built their product is second to none.
Okay. All right, Travis.
This was an interesting intersection of a lot of things that resulted in us having the prime Super Bowl, matchup that interested a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. Like I can talk to people that I personally talk to who say, "Hey, I haven't watched football all season outside of this one game here or these two games here," and they watched the Super Bowl simply because there were two black quarterbacks who were playing against each other, or other people who just haven't been watching. They've been boycotting them for fill in the blank reason, because everybody has the reason these days, it seems. And all of a sudden they're watching because, hey man, these are two incredible teams. I just kind of can't miss this. Or there's also the whole, hey, this thing called COVID was happening for the last few years, and now these Super Bowl parties are really starting to ramp up, because people are just tired of being in the house, and they're finally getting out there, and just in spite of the NFL still having, their issues with different sexist discrimination lawsuits. Despite all of these things, people are like, for fill in the blank reason, these two incredible teams with these two African American quarterbacks, and all of those things coming together, it was just perfect. It's a mixture of perfect timing, great teams, great circumstances, and awesome. A lot of viewership.
Boy, I'll tell you, I could have sworn you read Will Vogel's quote, because that's what he was saying. So go ahead, Jeremy. Jeremy,
I'm sorry, I coughed and I muted my mic and I forgot about it.
No big deal. All right.
I'm not surprised. These were the best two teams all year, with both teams having high-powered offenses and two solid defenses. Philly more so than KC. Also, the first time two African-American QBs played against each other.
Okay, what are your thoughts about the Super Bowl numbers? They're unbelievable, aren't they?
The Super Bowl numbers will always be high on TV. Why? The NFL says that game is for the average fan. The average fan cannot afford a $1,500 nosebleed seat.
That's true. Okay. All right, that's true. All right, Mel, you know what? I'm going to turn it over to you. You have a few topics. Your topics are going to go to Bo, Travis, and Jeremy, and I'm going to just take a breather and let you go ahead and take over. Mel, go ahead.
All right, thanks, Scott. Hey, guys, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention lately, and I want to just get your thoughts on, we got legalized gambling in some states. I think it's out of 36 states out of 50 that have legalized gambling. And you looked at what's happened in Alabama, and also just recently Iowa and Iowa State. Alabama was more so a coach getting involved with it. I don't necessarily know if there's any players on the baseball team that were involved with it. But in Iowa and Iowa State, you actually have some players that are involved in this little betting scandal that they're investigating right now. Do you think the NIL or lack of NIL for some of the non-revenue generating sports, do you think that has something to do with guys being enticed a little bit to maybe risk it a little bit more, and associate with some people who they may not have thought about associating with in years past? Because we really haven't heard about this. I mean, if it was going on, we certainly haven't heard about it. But now you got, DraftKings, they're marketing on NBA games, they're marketing on NFL games. You got all these different mobile apps that you can just, from the comfort of your home, bet on games. You just had the couple of Lions players last week that were involved in some betting on some games. Another guy just got released by the Lions that was originally suspended for 4 games. So you got these young kids, young impressionable kids, because these guys are fresh out of college. The ones that have gotten in trouble, Calvin Ridley, he was fresh out of college. The ones that have gotten, in trouble have been relatively young. So do you think it has something to either do with lack of NIL, or just a lack of maturity on these guys' part? I'll start off with on these gentlemen's behalf. I'll start off with you, Bo. What do you think?
All right, but let me add one thing. The lion that we're talking about is Stanleyberryhill. Just want to make sure we bring that up. All right, go ahead, Bo.
Yeah, so I think honestly what it is the lack of kind of an adult in their circle, keeping them, because this is their first time having money. And if what they've surrounded themselves by is a bunch of guys that are like, yeah, whatever you want to do, you should do. I think these younger players need that kind of adult in the room to help guide them, whether it's, a family member or a friend that isn't afraid to say, hey, you're messing up, or even if it's their agent, somebody needs to be in there and, help them make smart decisions. Because I remember doing a lot of dumb stuff as a kid, that having somebody that was close, especially when it came to earning potential, would have been beneficial for sure. So I think that's some of it. Some of it is common sense. Just don't gamble in the sport you're in, right? Because for the NFL anyway, it's not a problem for them to gamble. You just can't gamble on the NFL. So if you want to gamble on other sports, do it away from the facility. Just be smart about doing it. Now, some of it, I suppose, they maybe just didn't know the rule about not being able to do it on team facility property. But I feel like it kind of goes without saying that you shouldn't do it on the sport you're in. It's happened forever. I mean, the most notable, obviously, is Pete Rose, right? So you would think that some of these things would get learned along the way.
Yeah, you think about it. Calvin Ridley, he went to Alabama. Jamison Williams, he finished up in Alabama. These are two Alabama players. So you have to come. You got the coaching situation down there in Alabama. You have to kind of wonder what's going on down there in Alabama. You would think Jamison Williams, he would have paid attention to what happened to Calvin Ridley. I mean, he got suspended for an entire year for betting. Why would you even do that? Why risk it? You make plenty of money. Why risk it? I mean, if you're a thrill seeker, you have enough opportunities to satisfy that need by going out there and just playing football. If you're just a thrill seeker, so I just don't understand why somebody in his position would risk that. What do you think? What do you think, Smoking Jeremy? I see you over there nodding.
Oh, yeah. Well, Calvin Ridley, if you remember right, the game that he actually bet on that got him suspended was Atlanta Falcons versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. So what do the Falcons go ahead and do? Hey, we're going to trade him to you because he bet against you. I think that is the biggest hypocritical oxymoron moment of the year. That being said, but yes, I see your trend there, and I tend to agree with you. But it also does have a lot to do with the NIL deals, because the guys that are the marquee names in all those sports, they're the ones that are getting the NIL deals. The guys that don't are like, hey, I want some of that money too. I got a little bit of money from Joe Blow's tennis shoe shop. I'm going to put $50 on the game tonight. Not thinking they're going to get caught.
Where somebody comes to you when you're one of those non-revenue generating sports, somebody comes to you, hey, I got a proposition for you. You do this, 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 and this. I'll make sure you get taken care of. It's not even an NIL situation at that point in time. You're talking about throwing games. But
you understand what I'm saying there. It's either that or the other. You know what I'm saying, where if you got like $150 to get them through for a month from some small shop, or he got offered a little bit more than that to do what you're saying. Either way, it's wrong. Jamison Williams and Stanleyberryhill, the two guys that got the week suspension or the 6-week suspension because they didn't bet on NFL games. They bet actually on the college March Madness thing. Their problem was they didn't leave the parking lot.
Yep.
They were actually they left the building, but they were still on NFL property. That is the only thing they did wrong. But at the same time, while they're walking out, there was 8 staffers that caused this investigation to begin with for betting on the same thing inside. So player personnel, player assistants, and stuff like that, those were all weak, low-level coaching in player positions for coaching staffs that was let go. That's the leaders for your young rookies and second-year guys on an NFL team. They should not have did that, because that showed them, hey, if we can do it, you can do it. And that's a form of leadership doing that. And I'm more upset with those staffers that got let go than I am the players, because they were led that way.
I agree with you. And I can assure you, it goes back to what you were saying, Bo. I can assure you every year they have officials that come in to every training camp and they go over you the rules. And I know when I was playing, we couldn't even go to Vegas or Atlantic City. I mean, that was just you just knew that during the season, that's something that you could not do. You could not do that. So I know that they are schooled on what they can and cannot do. Now, whether they were told facility, inside the facility, parking lot, premises, I don't know exactly what it was, but it's unfortunate for those guys that they're going to have to, especially when you have so much momentum coming into the season from how they finished last season. You're pretty happy with the draft that you have. You're happy, number one, that Jameson Williams is going to be fully healthy and be able to start the season, and then all of a sudden have that happen, just kind of burst your bubble a little bit. What do you think about that, Travis?
Yeah, that's a rough one from the college perspective. Like, I treat the college perspective and the NFL perspective a little bit different, because one's historically been treated as a job, whereas for the kids it's new money. It's new money versus old money, we'll say, and it's changing a little bit. So to your point, you have the officials, you have the executives who come in and tell NFL players, hey, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. We don't know exactly how they presented that. We don't know if they said you can't be in the parking lot, you can't be in the hotel that that the team is staying in, et cetera, et cetera. I have no idea how they present that piece. But you were making the assumption that, hey, we delivered this information to you guys. This is what you can't do, and you should follow the rules based on what we've already told you. For college kids, there's so many different campuses. I mean, there's hundreds of these campuses. You're in the thousands of teams. And I'm sure there's major inconsistencies, or possibly even, no information being delivered to these individual students on how, these rules surrounding betting. So while the NIL money can absolutely play a role in the betting in college and, sports overall, I'm not 100% sure that is specifically the reason. It may be a contributing factor. I'm just not 100% sure how much it specifically is, because again, I can speak to my own college experience. We bet in college. I'm not putting anybody else on. I'm not throwing anybody else under the bus on this. So I'm just saying we, as a generalized statement, gambled in college. Not on football games that we played in, nothing along those lines, but just other games and things of that nature. No one talked to us about any of that. We didn't have a whole seminar or anything talking about these things. And I have to question whether or not these kids have also. And it stinks. But whether or not you know the rules or not, ignorance is not an excuse for breaking the law, like a police officer tells you every day.
Exactly.
All right, on to my next question. So I don't know if you guys have been following what's been going on at the University of Colorado with Deion Sanders. They've had, since he's been hired as a football coach, they've had 61 players leave the program, or voluntarily or otherwise, because he told them that he was going to cut players. He said, hey, look here, there's some positions that are already locked up. I'm bringing my own guys in, and they're going to be in that position. This is what he told one recruit. He's 6'8", 320 pounds. He said, I know in my heart of hearts, the school is going to pick you up in the portal when you enter. Make your weaknesses your strengths and keep progressing. I hope you have a great future. It just won't be here at the University of Colorado. That's
wow.
That's what Deion Sanders told one of the players. So players have this is not something that's really talked about, but coaches have that latitude to do that in the first year when they come to a new program, where they can actually get rid of some players that they don't fit, what it is that they're trying to do. And Deion was very upfront when he came in there and let them know that everybody should go ahead and get in the portal, because they were 1-11 last year. So he's looking to. He was brought in there to shake up that program, and he was very honest with these guys that most of them probably wouldn't be there. But the thing you have to do is, if the guy wants to continue to go to school at that university, they have to keep him on scholarship. They can cut him, but he has to remain on scholarship. So they do have 4 players who decided that they wanted to stay there at the University of Colorado that are on scholarship, but they just won't be playing football. So what are you guys' thoughts? Right now he's got 63 players on scholarship, and you can have 85 players total on scholarship. But he's got 63 scholarship players right now. What do you think about Deion Sanders' approach, how he's going about doing things, and how do you think Colorado will fare this year in the, what is it? Is the Pac-12 still?
Yeah.
The Pac-12.
Yeah.
Bo?
Yeah, so obviously they're going to be better, right? So this is where I find this funny, because anytime there's a new coach, there's a lot of turnover on staff, on players, regardless of the level of play, right? So for him to come in the beginning, say, I have guys I'm bringing, a bunch of you aren't going to be here, hop in, and for him to follow through with exactly what he was saying, I don't really know why people are up in arms about it. It again wasn't a 1-11 team. It's not like Deion's trying to run that back. And if he's going to make wholesale changes, that's when you're going to do it, right? It's that first year, make the biggest changes, because even if you have a horrible first year, it's your first year. So nobody's going to look bad on that, right? You're implementing your system, you're bringing in your guys, everything is changing. So if you have a bad year, it doesn't matter. I don't think he's going to necessarily have a bad year. I don't think he's going to be, some people are saying that he could win the Pac-12, which I think is hilarious. For them to go worst to first is probably not the deal, but for them to be a competitive team, yeah, I think they'll be that.
How about you, Smoking Jeremy B?
Deion Sanders, he is one of those guys. Okay. I remember him. I got you. I remember him also taking away the numbers, say you have to earn your number on the team. His approach is tough, but you can't show weakness as a coach. You're a leader of me. Colorado steadily improve was his last word he put out there.
Okay, go ahead, Jeremy.
Deion Sanders wants this team to improve, and he knew what they had on that roster last year was slightly above bull dung with only 1 win. So he said, okay, these guys, you're okay. The rest of you, kick rocks. I mean, that's basically what he said. And as a leader of men, he's already drawing a lot of good recruits there. If you look at his recruiting class, he had a great recruiting class compared to what Colorado has done over the past 20 years. So I think they will improve. Will it be a playoff-worthy team? Probably not, because it takes a lot of turnover to turn a 1-and-whatever team into a 6-win team. But as long as they win 3 wins, it's a great improvement from 1.
Yeah, I think, winning with young players, especially in football, is tough. I remember going to college and, you're young and you're a little wet behind your ears, and you see these guys, they're grown men. I mean, I wasn't shaving when I first went to college. Man, these guys got full beards and all kinds of stuff going on. You're like, man, you're looking at this guy. I remember the guy, our center, he's like 6'7", 280 pounds. I'm looking up at him. His chest is out like this. I'm like, my God, this guy is huge. Biggest man I've ever seen in my life. I promise you. I'm like, this guy is huge.
And when you see those guys in the back of your head, you say, he's not touching me.
yeah, he's not gonna get his hands on me. But Deion did say, they came out there, nobody had numbers. He did take away their numbers, and he said, hey, if you're an offensive lineman or defensive lineman, you weren't getting a single-digit number. He said it's just not happening. He said single-digit numbers went to that guy. You have to be that guy, and you're not as a lineman. You're not going to be that guy. So don't even think about getting a single-digit number. You're not getting a single-digit number. So, Travis, what are your thoughts about Deion Sanders in Colorado and the way he's going about his business?
Yeah, I never understood what the problem was when there was all the outcry, and there always seems to be outcry on social media these days, just because fill in the blank. I feel like everyone just has to have an opinion and it needs to be amplified. But when Deion said, "Hey, you guys can leave," I felt that. As a former college player who played for a team who lost every game at UCF in my freshman year. We lost every game in my redshirt season. So I've seen this. We've hired George O'Leary, who came in and cleared out that roster. Probably 70% of the roster was cleared out. Like, I've been a member of a team that this has happened, and brought in some great players, one of whom, I mean, I got injured, but nevertheless took my position. I own that. Like, and that dude was great. That dude's in the UCF Hall of Fame right now, Joe Burnett. Cool. Like, it's a sucky spot for those kids, but would you rather have a coach that's going to come in and tell you, hey man, fight for your job, but in reality, this is not a level competition. This is like, a 12-year backup quarterback veteran fighting with this rookie quarterback that we just drafted. That's probably not going to be an even playing field, right? Like, the man came in and said, hey, I'm bringing in my guys. You guys can enter the portal, and you may actually legitimately get a fair shot somewhere else. Like, that's mad respect. He could have left those kids hanging, and it would have been the best thing for him to have a roster that's competing all over the place. But in reality, that man knows what he wants, and he knows what he's looking at. Someone who watches film, and anybody who knows Deion's story knows that dude is a dog at watching film. Like, and I have to imagine that's what he does. Before he even took that job, he probably on that flight there was watching like 12 hours of film, of cut up film. You can watch, I don't know, you can watch a season and a half of games, in a 7-hour flight. So I have to believe he knew generally what he had in that locker room. And if there was anyone worth keeping, he probably had an individual one-on-one conversation with that person. Right. So at the end of all of it, I give the man mad respect for being upfront and clear about his expectations and clear about, what he wanted from those kids, or treated them like adults and with respect upfront. Dope. As far as Colorado's concerned. Sorry, go ahead.
The only thing I'm going to add to this thing, and I think a lot of people out here that follow the sport know it as well as you can, George O'Leary just needed to improve his resume skills because he nearly landed the job at the University of Notre Dame. He's just lucky that his work over at Georgia Tech got him the job over at UCF, where indeed he's an icon. So George O'Leary, I don't know who you had to do your other resume, but I know Notre Dame wasn't on there, and that's why you lost that job over before you had it over at South Bend at the Golden Dome. Instead, you landed in the Sunshine State. So, George, but he turned out to be iconic at Central Florida, like you alluded to, Travis. But I'd like to know who George O'Leary hired to clean up his resume.
I got an idea. He could have used Staples where they'd have used a regular font, but he decided to hire his wife, and she used the pretty one.
All right, well, whatever.
Oh man, that man hired Saul Goodman to change that resume. That was a deep job.
All right, so what else you got, Mel?
So Deion, I can appreciate him. He's an old school coach. He's gonna shoot it to you straight. He's gonna give it to you straight. I can appreciate that as a player. You always want somebody to be straight up with you, tell you, exactly where it is you need to improve, what it is going to take for you to get on the field. And a lot of young kids, man, we're talking about last weekend with Richmond Webb. It's trust. It's trust, and he's going to go with guys that he can trust. He don't trust any of those guys that played on that team the year before because of that performance that they displayed the prior year. They're 1-11, so he doesn't have a trust level with them. So he's going to bring in his own guys, some guys that he can trust. He knows he can trust his son to play the quarterback position. The likes of Travis Hunter, obviously, to play a corner, and he's probably going to play some wide receiver as well, and some other guys that he brought in there. So I can appreciate what it is that he's doing. Obviously, football has changed. College football has changed from when I played college football. There's a lot more money involved. I know Coach Donahue wasn't getting paid $4 or $5 million. I think that's what Deion's getting paid. He wasn't getting paid that kind of money back then. We didn't have the type of turnover in the head coaching positions back then that you see right now. But, I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do. And no, I don't think they're going to win the Pac-12. I think UCLA is going to be very good. USC is obviously going to be good. Utah is going to be good. Oregon is going to be good. It's going to be tough. It's going to be very, very difficult. So with that, Scott, I will lateral it back to you.
Thank you very much, Mel. Great job.
I got one.
As always, I know a good co-host when I see it, and you passed with flying colors on Richmond Webb.
Bo had something he wanted to say.
All right, go ahead, Bo.
So I got one for you guys, especially because we're on this front. So with the NIL going in, do you think that the NCAA should get rid of the amateurism rule and let some of these lower level D1 guys actually go and participate in the XFL and the USFL, get extra reps. It improves that product, but it allows them to still, play college ball where the top athletes have, these NIL deals where they're making money. It allows them to still make some money playing the sport they like. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't like it. I don't like it.
Yeah, me either.
I don't like the NIL. I'm not a fan. And the lawsuit that was brought against the NCAA was really not. This wasn't the outcome that they're looking for. They really wanted the schools to pay the players, not for these guys to be independent contractors and go out there and get their best deal. Mm-hmm. This is a free for all. This here. Man, you don't know what direction this is going. And coaches have talked about it. They don't know. They can't control it, and they need to do something. And they need to do something quickly before this gets out of control. When I talk about it all the times with the guys that I play with. I mean, it's hard. I mean, you're 18, 19-year-old kid. It's very difficult to say that these kids. Number one, what incentive do they have to get better now? If you got $1 million, $2 million, $3 million NFL NIL deal, what incentive do you have to get better? The other thing is he's getting $2 million. I'm getting $50,000. I've got a problem. Right. I've got a problem. Maybe when I'm spotting him on the bench press, I look away a little bit, and that bar comes across his neck. I don't know. But these are kids. I mean, those kind of things are going to happen. There's going to be jealousy and all that kind of stuff. So I don't like NIL whatsoever. If they would have just said, hey, give the kids 15, 20 grand, 25 grand across the board, that would have been much better off than doing this. Let them handle it. They can do the NIL, put the money away in some type of fund or something like that, where it's gaining interest and things of that nature, and pay the players the money. It's their money. Give them the money, but everybody should get the same thing across the board.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say to this, Bo, is I don't know how doable it is with the XFL and the USFL. That's the only thing I can say, because I think that's a stepping stone to get to the NFL. I mean, the NIL, we all know, has messed a lot of things up. And, Bo, what we're going to do, because of time constraints tonight, is as you and I go ahead and chat on Twitter, we'll probably come up with a topic that allows us to spend a lot more time on it. But when you draw the XFL and the USFL together, I just don't know how doable it is. I think they're just a stepping stone to get to the NFL right now. Back in the day when I covered the league, one was competing against each other. But it's a good topic. And I'll tell you what, when you come on the next time, we'll lead off with it. How's that sound, Bo?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. Remind me when we get off tonight, when you go back on Twitter, and put it in my box, and then I'll make that as a topic when you're back on. Travis
Scott,
and Jeremy,
same thing. Yeah. No, same thing with that NIL conversation. I wanted to touch on that next time we speak.
Oh,
yeah, we will.
I had a good one.
No, that's right. Well, then what we'll do is we'll go ahead, Bo, once you put that in my box, and when we bring on in about 2 weeks or so, then we're going to address that. Okay? Fair enough?
Yeah.
All right. Just everybody should know here that following Inside the Pigskin, we have 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. You're going to love this show because a guy that I worked with many years ago at the Tampa Tribune, K.R. Lombardia, if this guy isn't the most colorful coach I've ever seen, okay, then believe me, tune in and watch. There'll be last controversy, etc. Okay, so please, after this is concluded. So with that said, Bo, great first act. Bell, great second act. And I know what to expect out of Travis and Jeremy. So with that said, let me go ahead and go over some company business before we wrap this bad boy up with your exits. Okay, the audio version of 108 Inside the Pigskin, we'll have that too. Okay, can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcast. Also, please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube, South Florida Tribune. We're striving for 1,000 subscribers. Please also comment, like, and share the broadcast. Want to be a guest? You can do so in the chat room or send your topic ideas to South Florida Tribune at gmail.com. Also, if you want to advertise cost efficiently, and I remain cost efficiently, call me at 954-304-4941. We are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Tribune South. And kudos to Candy Ebling, who does a marvelous job putting all these shows up there. our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. And of course, I had mentioned the email. With that said, okay, Mel, we'll go right to left. Mel, let everybody know how they can get a hold of you.
Get hold of me on all the social media at Mel Farr Jr. That's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Find me at Mel Farr Jr. And then what we have going on, find out what we have going on for the youth at Mel Farr, the youth here down in Georgia, Atlanta, and also up in Michigan at melfarr.org.
All right, you're next, Bo.
Yeah, so you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. It's all Football Talk with Bo, and then here on YouTube at Football-Talk.
And of course, he'll be our newest panelist here on Inside the Pigskin. Welcome aboard, Bo. We're really glad to have you. Great first act. And like I said, we're going to touch on that subject the next time we come back on. All right, Travis, go ahead.
And you can find me here. You can find me here every week, every 2 weeks on Inside the Pigskin, and whenever else you'll have me. You can find me covering the Jacksonville Jaguars throughout the season with A7BN Sports and Student of the Game. And you can also find my writings on bigcatcountry.com.
All right, last but not least, Smoking Jeremy, go ahead.
All right, first and foremost, you can find me on the southfloridatribune.com under the Motor City Tribune heading with the list of authors such as Scott Morganroth and George Eichhorn we saw in the chat tonight. You can also find me on the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel any day of the week that Scott needs me, whether it's talking about football, basketball, baseball, hockey, horse racing even. I've done it all, including auto racing. And then there's my channel, which is Kneecap Biting with Smoking Jeremy B. You can find that on YouTube. You can also find it on my Motor City Kneecap Biters page, and you can also find it on NFL News Talk and Trash Talk, respectively, on Facebook. You can also find me at Smoking Jeremy B on Twitter.
All right, well done, guys. I know it's the first time Bo worked with us. So how was your first experience, Bo, with us?
Yeah, it was fun. It was a good time, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, well, again, you'll be on, mark my word, okay? And I appreciate your help on Twitter, getting the information out. That's very helpful as we try to draw traffic to the website. More importantly, we want to make sure we get the shows as well. And Bo has been a tremendous help. And I've been known to find some good guests on Twitter. Bo is just the latest in a long line. So with that said, we have 108 Stitches Baseball Talk following Inside the Pigskin. So on behalf of Mel Farr Jr., Bo, Football Talk, Travis Holmes, and Smoking Jeremy B. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Inside the Pigskin. And immediately following this broadcast, we have 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. Good night, everybody.